So with not much ado, first of all, I wanted to thank you for inviting New York State DOT up here to your beautiful Wild Center and to the beautiful Adirondacks. Some of your faces look familiar to me because about a year and a half ago we had a workshop at Paul Smith about road zones. And I know some of you look familiar to me, maybe I look familiar to you as well, and it's great to see you again. So with me today, I'm Elizabeth Kolb. I'm with the New York State DOT's statewide policy bureau. I kind of moved away from operation. I don't do road salt anymore. I do climate change sustainability issues. With me is Art Sanderson. He's with our consultant management, George Long with our Office of Structures, and somewhere in the crowd there's Ed Franz. Thank you, Ed. You might all know Ed. He's our point of contact for the Adirondack issues. Well, I'm going to give a very light overview. Oh, I have a little quote I wanted to insert here. I don't want to forget about it. And we're up here in North Country. I thought it was pretty appropriate. You know hockey, your hockey land probably. And the great Wayne Gretzky, he made this wonderful quote. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it has been. And this applies in this uncertain time of climate change, and how do we adapt properly, you know? Are we doing this right? Are we going to where the puck is going to be? Next slide, please. Did we skip a slide, or? No? All right, that's good. Good. I want to quickly mention, in terms of preparing for climate change and sustainability issues, back in 2007, New York State DOT put together a volunteer group of folks that joined a work group on climate change and energy issues. And that was back in 2007, and then when New York State came around and said, yes, we wanted to work on climate change, we're going to do a sea level rise task force and come out with a report that will tell us how we should deal with sea level rises. Or we're going to put together the New York State Climate Action Plan interim report. Or we're going to look at NYSERDA's climate project, or the New York State Climate Smart Communities, whatever it was for climate change. New York State DOT was prepared because we had this wonderful volunteer work group where folks said, I can help, I have this expertise, I can go here and help. We were prepared, ready to jump in. Now, in terms of adaptation, New York City has, I'll ask you, I'll kind of go like that. Right? New York City has a very avant-garde adaptation plan for climate change. I'm not sure if any of you folks had a chance to look at it, but they really take transportation and infrastructure extremely serious. It's at the top of their priority list in terms of adaptation. There are other great efforts going on, but a lot of them are still in the starting phases. It's something that's kind of all gelling together. It still has a ways to go. New York State DOT is involved with adaptation issues, and we are, again, we're gelling slowly, it's coming along. We are involved in research. Research has been ongoing for the last few years. We asked, how can we mainstream adaptation into what we do? We have additional research going on. And on the 24th of October, for example, this is just an example, we're holding a larger workshop with our executives and our practitioners to really figure out how are we going to mainstream adaptation issues, climate change projections into our design and into our planning. Next slide, please. As you know, DOT steps up to the plate. You've seen us step up to the plate after Irene. Irene really hit large here. We also had to deal with Lee. When these storms hit, half of the state was basically, quote unquote, more or less underwater or damaged. We stepped up to the plate. Out of the 4 folks here, 2 of us were on those 24/7 call centers, looking at things. Everybody had a role. Everybody had a role. Everybody stepped up. It was a huge effort. And we get ready for every potential emergency there is. Be it snow, ice storm, windstorm, anything, we're always on call. And so are you at the municipal level. You have to be prepared on terms of what might be. And in the past, we've always kind of oriented ourselves, well, there's going to be a snowstorm, a little ice storm, we can deal with it. Next slide, please. It's kind of changing a little bit, as you've eloquently pointed out. how do we address these type of events when we're getting 12, 13, 14 inches of rain? There is a lot of uncertainty. Can we ever be prepared? Can we ever truly know that this bridge, this culvert, is going to hold for these type of extreme events, which we don't have that much experience with at this time? So we really have to address a lot of levels of uncertainty, and I've heard this word used several times this morning already. Next slide, please. Just a summary, this is like a, what do you call it, cartoon of what's going to change in the Adirondacks. You're most concerned about those extreme precipitation events, maybe the reduced snowfall down the road, and you may get more freezing rain. So this could be a concern to you as well. Next slide, please. I wanted to quickly go over some points from the Climate Action Plan interim report, those transportation recommendations, and then George and Art will talk about their more practical applications in terms of what we can do to get prepared. This Climate Action Plan was released as an interim report, and it can be found online, and it resulted in 5 recommendations what we can do to adapt transportation infrastructure. How to make it less vulnerable. Next slide, please. Recommendation 1, prepare detailed inventories and climate vulnerability assessments of critical transportation infrastructure and corridors. This recommendation is actually a little bit longer, and it also states that municipalities with jurisdiction over transportation, highways, and bridges shall do the same. So how can you do that? We do have a projected set of climate projections. And what is really kind of missing at this point, even though we have the projections, they still need to be state endorsed. And that is quite important. But we can say we have the climate models. They might need a little bit more refinement in the future, a little bit of updating, but the basic work, thank you, Amanda and Mark, that work has been done through the ClimAid. Now the co-benefit of doing these assessments is that we will know what infrastructure is good and what is not so good, what needs to be worked on. So with or without climate change, this is a good assessment to have in your books. Next slide, please. The next recommendation is kind of short. Prepare for emergencies. Well, that's a no-brainer, right? The language actually states that this preparation, excuse me, I just came back from Germany, so I'm still half German, so I apologize. And a little bit jet-lagged. The language actually states that preparation involves prioritizing transportation infrastructure, and Art Sanderson will talk about this topic. And this brings up the issue of funding. Who can possibly pay for all that needs to be done? And here in New York State, we're really being held down. We're like extremely lucky to be able to drive up here because there is no money for much of anything. But it does make sense to know where we do need money so that when there is an opportunity to get some money, we know where we need it because we prioritized what needs to be done and we're ready for it. So this is just a very good thing to have in hand, to know where the money is needed. Next slide, please. Recommendation 3. Incorporate state-endorsed climate change projections into all relevant planning, design, operational decision-making. And we've heard a little bit or a lot about this already because you don't want people building in the floodplain next to a creek. Same thing with roads. Do we really need to be where the water wants to be? And when we design bridges and roads, we design them to last. So we need to think about where's that climate going to change and where's this going to be in a very good balance. George Long will talk to us much more about this topic. Now, recommendation 3 also said develop guidance, and this guidance is really kept in mind to develop guidance for the local and municipalities. So this guidance is being developed, albeit a little bit slowly. But there are things that you can do in the meantime, even before this guidance comes out. And again, Art and George will talk about that. Next slide, please. Recommendation 4, look at the future. long-term transportation planning should incorporate state-endorsed climate change projections. Well, long-term planning, we're looking 30 years. We do 30-year master transportation plans, but actually what we're building has to last 75, 100 or more years. We need to look way into the future. So that's where that part comes in. We need to know where that future is going, where the water is going, what kind of flooding event, how will our streams behave, and so on. Next slide, please. The last recommendation is recommendation 5. And it talks about that transportation investment, again, should be consistent with the long-term vision of transportation. Now, what kind of transportation do you envision up here in the Adirondacks? Is it efficient in terms of energy use? Does it connect people and jobs even after a storm? Is it providing the right choices? Do you have redundancy? And that's the long-term vision. We need to get all of these issues on the table, and the decisions we make today need to look at that type of future. And most importantly, when we have these flood events, especially up here in the Adirondacks, you have natural ecosystems that really function to hold back a lot of this water. And this is written into recommendation 5 to let those natural systems do their work, incorporate these into your planning so that in the future they can do their work equally well as today or even better. Next slide, please, and that's my last slide. So in terms of an adaptation roundtable, there's a lot of uncertainty what's going to happen. But if we do start working on this, think smarter, look at the future and look at what kind of risk we have now, do our critical assessments of our infrastructure, we actually derive co-benefits. One of them knowing where the money should go, where we can become stronger now in terms of our infrastructure out there. And what's really important, all of us, nobody can say we have plenty resources, except for NYSERDA. But the rest of us here at the table, we're all strapped. But maybe there is a real nugget in working together. I know some of the folks here at the table, you have ideas, what can be done? What would be the right thing to do? Share it with others, share it with us, share it with your colleagues, so that the right ideas can come forward. And we'll do the same.